Hello, namaste, and greetings. I'm Prakash Chandragiri. So I'm going to share a short reflection on translation studies. And this translation studies is a new discipline. So even though it has been practiced for many years, so I would like to say something new and one unique myth from the history of Bible, the Tower of Babel. So the history of translation. So many claim that, and through this point, I would like to start. So the origin of translation. So there is a great and interesting story in the Bible, in the book of Genesis and chapter 11. There is a story that the people they tried to make a tower, and the tower's name was Babels, and they kept the name, and they tried to challenge with God, and the God came to the earth, and the people's challenge to God, and God became angry, and the God scattered all the people in different parts of the world, and then they started to create new languages. But at that time there was only one language, and then they scatter, and later they meet each other, and they needed to translate from one language to another. And this is a history of translation, the origin of translation. So it is believed, it is claimed, just a myth from the Bible. So I would like to start with this. So while studying translation studies with my instructor, I'm so impressed and so blessed that I was not familiar with the ideas, dynamic translations, formal translations, semantically, communicatively. So while uh, before starting translation studies, so and I used to think translation study is a very complicated task, and so I used to ignore different aspects of the cultural aspects and context, and so on, and then I was not focusing on the different genres like poetries, even legal text and economic text and different other text while starting before this translation studies in this semester. So I was only familiar what the translation is, somehow familiar, but I was not familiar with what and how we expect both. So it is not too much complicated if we work smartly. So the workshop experience I have been experiencing with my fellows and with my instructor, and instructor has really made us practice different workshop and activities which are very cascading and collaborative with the fellows, and we are really developing and elevating the levels of translations different texts. So it is so interesting, interactive, cascading, and we have noticed the errors of peers each other making some tracks, and then we review, we notice errors, and we give some feedbacks and comments, and our feedbacks works very well, and we revise the text and we proofread it, and then we reread it, and this is really a joyful moment, and as well as a challenging point as well. So translation of poetry we practice. So I was not familiar with translation of the poetry, and now I'm very happy to choose the words and terms and to translate the poetry and how we translate it and how it was practiced. Somehow I'm very much familiar with this workshop, and similarly we did a legal text, and legal text, some jargon, some terms, so we could explore uh, through this practice. So I was not familiar even in Nepali language, my source language also, I'm not familiar with different genres or terms or jargons. But now I have become somehow confident in translating legal text, poetry, and the economic text as well. So economic text, so we have some different other words which are connote each other and that associate with the source language and target language text. So this is also one practice we did with friends each other. So we are very happy to cascade, share, and pitch each other. And as we know that while studying translation studies in this semester, so we have got some ideas to sense, to grasp the spirit of the language as well as the writer's characteristic spirit, that intuitive perception. So cultural perceptions and the contextual perception. So we are getting that. And so we know that no global communication happens without translation. This is the world of 21st century. We are living in this exponential times. We are in diversity and we have to collaborate, internationalize, localize, and we have to bring the international dimensions on different genre and areas. And for that, translation has become a great key and tool for globalization. So the scope of translation studies, it is a multidimensional, it is extensive, and it's broadening. It has to know the developments in the field of creative arts, even literature, business, science, politics, and different other legal activities. So its scope is very high. And it was a question there, like whether it is a discipline or an art or philosophy. But finally, the term translation studies came as a new discipline. And while studying or exploring the translation studies, so we could see some translation equivalence terms. So it is a major concept in the theory of translation, and we have to remember the Peter Newmark, so who introduced even NIDA and their equivalence, dynamic equivalence focused. So NIDA, another concept of translation is dynamic equivalence translation. So that is somehow different than formal equivalence. So formal is a semantic focused and dynamic is communicative equivalence focused. So the equivalence in translation is sought that of the masses, not on the form of the structure. So these two um, translation experts, so we have to think of on this point. So we become so grateful to translate the different texts like legal text, economic text, and poetry, even from my source language Nepali to English language. So that we got some joyful moments that, oh, this is a new term for in my culture and the context. So how I can translate it into English language, and I was somehow feeling so joyful, cheerful, and happy, jolly, and cheerful. And similarly, but I got some challenges. So how I can connote, how I can associate the source language into the target language text into the English language. That means so some challenges, some joyful moments. So life is like a mixture of the sorrows and joyful. Even the translation studies go in this adventure. We have to face both joys and challenges. But the greatest skill is practice, practice, and practice. And our instructor has let us practice a lot, and I'm so indebted and happy for that. That the practice and practice and practice is the great key for developing the translation skill, and it is a skill, and we can develop it. But not only practice. So I think we need to do perfect practice as well. So while doing intelligently, if we work smartly, even in translation, so we should not do hard work, I think. It means if we work hard, so we must, or we will have panic. But if we work smartly, if we work knowing the different areas, equivalence, and different terms, and its context, cultural aspects, and then we can really make it smarter, and we can do it intelligently. So let's not work hard, but let's work smartly. So thank you so much for this opportunity to present. So this is such reflections what I have understood through this translation studies. So we know different perspectives on the translation. So we are starting, we are knowing on these points, and but we will practice, we will use in real writing context in the days to come. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Have a great time.